now that we have all the walls up, it's time for the plywood sheathing and the trusses.
Okay, top plate is complete. I've also started marking the layout for the trusses. Try not to fall down. Mark down the edge so I can see where the trusses actually fall from the inside and from the outside. Intersection, overlapping intersection. This ties it together. You know, the top plate is different than the intersection of the bottom plate. Alright, this is a video about blocking. This is our kitchen. Blocking is used to give you a nailing surface. Here in the kitchen, as an example, this lower row of blocking is so the back of the cabinet and the countertop has something to nail to in between the studs. The upper, same for the upper cabinets to tie to. Anywhere along there. Of course, you can always tie to the studs. In the bathroom, we've done blocking as well. This is, it's going to be hard to say, but anyway, this is a hallway leading into, this might be where we have a bench seat or hanging type things. Back here, this is an area for a wash machine, a sink, and a dryer. And then above it is going to be cabinets that hang down towards. So it gives you something to nail to, secures a wall in case we put a cabinet or shelf right above the dryer. Over here on the opposite side is the shower. This gives us a place for cabinetry here and on both sides. And even something as simple as a blocking for the toilet paper roll. You know, otherwise you're using those silly anchor bolts and sheetrock that always fall out. This is the way you do it when you can. You build yourself a custom house. You can put these things in. If you get your house framed, it'll never happen unless you pay somebody to do it, but then you have to know about doing it. So anyway, that's what blocking is. Essentially, it gives you something to hold heavy items on the wall.
On checking these walls, it was about half a bubble off plumb, and so I used these 2x4s to rack the whole house over to the right. See, in the living room, there's no internal walls, so nothing to hold it in place. So we use these, held it in place until we get the trusses on.
There's the front side. There's that beast out there in the back left. It's 8 o'clock in the morning. I've been working since about an hour before sunrise to maybe 10 o'clock if I can stand.
Okay, as we zoom out, you'll begin to understand how all these hurricane brackets work. Everything's tied together from the top plate down through the studs. The studs have a strap that go all the way to the seal plate. The seal plate is then anchored to the block. The block is structurally tied down to the footer. That house isn't going anywhere. So even on the weaker spots, supposedly weaker spots, you can see that the headers have straps, 24-inch straps on both sides to hold the whole thing together. It's an enormous amount of steel, but it's going to be there.
This is our son-in-law Wyatt, and he and Michaela have come over using their vacation time to help us work on the cottage. They are going to be helping install the plywood sheathing. So what Dwayne has done is put a nail in between the block and the seal plate so that the plywood can rest, that first row there can rest on top of that nail while it's being shot in with a nail gun.
Michaela, drop your bottom left.
Other side of the house, this front porch here. Wyatt and Michaela came out and helped today. It was really cool. That plywood is not as light as it looks. It's 5/8 plywood. It's not super heavy, but it's, 30 pounds you're trying to hold up while nailing. Not easy. With 3 hands, it went along okay.
It took 2 days to get the plywood sheathing on the house, and Sierra was able to come down and help us on that second day. So, as you can see, we've got it all finished. And now that we have the trusses here, it's time to get busy. We have 2 types of trusses here, and so the ones that we need first, of course, are on the bottom. Actually, they're in the middle. So Wyatt, Michaela, and I are taking off what's called a scissor truss. That's for the vaulted ceiling over the kitchen living room area. And we're leaning them up against the house so that we can get to the standard gable truss, which is the first truss that we'll install. We're starting from the back of the house, working our way to the front. And there's the gable truss. So our first idea was to lift this truss up over the front of the house. Since we have 4 people, Michaela and I are on ladders, Wyatt and Dwayne are lifting up, and it's just, we weren't up high enough to be able to grab onto it, and there's even a strap on it, and we thought maybe we could pull it up over, but this wasn't so successful. So we're going to have to switch gears, come up with something else. And what we came up with was pretty simple. We decided to take the truss right through the front door. So once we got it inside, we flipped the truss over and rested it on the top plate. First one side and then the other side. And there it is, the first truss is up.
Let's go, come on. Push it. Push it. Yeah.
So after the truss is up there, Dwayne stands it up in place, and then we have Michaela on one side, and Dwayne has pre-marked the upper plate, and she is pulling it towards her to get the truss into place on that marker. And Wyatt was on the other side doing the same thing. And so the truss has to be not only front and back centered, but side to side. And once the truss is in place and on its marker, we then have to secure it down with a hurricane tie. These are screwed into the top plate. And one day, and half the truss is done.
Okay, we try to start early in the morning. We got a floodlight in there. That's what it looks like early in the morning. I put in some special brackets that Simpson Strong Ties make that keep these trusses on 24-inch on center. Very helpful.
And so once the shenanigans are all done, it's back to work. So these are the scissor trusses, and they go over the kitchen and the living room. But the living room has no place for Dwayne to stand, whereas he had the two kitchen walls with the other trusses. So we're having to use, Michaela and I are using 2x4s, and Wyatt's on a ladder in the middle, and we're having to push the truss, the scissor truss, up to Dwayne, where he grabs it and pulls it up. It's a little different than the standard trusses. And in just a couple days, all the trusses are done, except for the front porch. And a huge, huge thank you to Wyatt, Michaela, and Sierra.